everyone, it's Mary. Today I'll talk about the books that I read in the month of February, and I'm happy to say that February was a good reading month for me as well. Probably not as good as January, but you know, I'm very satisfied with my reading this year so far. So I'm gonna resume my old way of doing wrap-ups, in which I'm gonna talk about my least favorite books first up and work my way up to the book that I enjoyed the most. So spoiler alert, this month I've read my first 5-star read of the year, and I'm very excited about that. I really hope that I'm gonna read many more, because I feel like, you know, one 5-star read in 2 months is not that much, so I need to correct maybe my reading a little bit. The first book that I'm gonna talk about is a book that I listened to on audio. It was the pick of Yamini's book club that I'm part of, which is called The Roaring Twenties on Voxer, and it was My Own Words by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I decided to talk about this book first because I simply did not give a rating to it. It's not that I not enjoyed this book, I just didn't feel like giving it a star rating because I don't feel like I am the target audience for this one. I was not one of the people that voted for it when we decided which book to pick for February. But I was on board. I was like, well, it sounds interesting. I didn't have a previous knowledge of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I didn't know anything about her. She is a jurist, and she's actually one of the first, I think the second female in the U.S. Supreme Court. So she's pretty badass, and I didn't know anything about her, and I was like, well, I'm glad to get to know her story. But this was actually not a biography, which is probably, it has been mismarketed, I guess, but also I didn't look that much into it before diving into it. So probably, if I read more carefully what this book was about, I would have known that it's just a collection of speeches, of essays that she wrote or that she gave in case of speeches. And it's very technical, I think if you lack context, especially, law-wise, I don't feel like you appreciate this the way it's supposed to be appreciated. So I remember starting this book, and the introduction was just her short biography, and I was like, wait, if you're telling me everything about her life now in this introduction, what is this book going to be about? And I was so disappointed that I would not be able to to get to know her as a person during this entire collection of speeches and texts. The audio version of this one is good because there are some most of the speeches are live recorded, so you have her voice talking, and it's amazing. But again, I felt like even when they were maybe laughing because she had made a joke, I could not get everything that she was referring to, just because I lack context again. So I don't feel like it was the right book to pick for me, at least. So that's why I'm not, giving it a star rating. It was interesting for what it was, but it was just not a book that I would have picked up otherwise. So yeah, this one. Then we have The Word for World is Forest by Ursula K. Le Guin. And again, this book, it was not a bad book. I did enjoy myself reading it. My main problem with this one, and I decided to read this book because I've always wanted to check out her work, and I wanted to give sci-fi another go because it's just not a genre that I usually like. So I thought it was a perfect combination. It's a short book, and I've heard nothing but great things about the author. And when in our book club, in Yamini's book club, there were people interested in reading Le Guin's work, so we made a separate sort of group, a read-along sort of group to read this book, and I just thought it was a perfect chance for me to get to her finally. And this talks about humans conquering this different planet and basically being horrible to native people that live there, that they basically enslave them and treat them not as equals, not even as human beings, but not even as animals, or sort of like animals, and in very just bad ways. They even make up a word for them, which is creatures. And they are compared to, I think, even monkeys or something, because they also have like different colored skin and fur. They're like green and I don't know if they're blue again as well. But anyway, this is a very, powerful analogy, and it just talks about colonization basically. So what they're doing affects native people in a negative way, and actually changes their spirit. And yeah, it's just very apt and just very relatable to our own, real world. And it was an important read, and again, so many things condensed in a very short book. But first of all, it did feel like it was longer, which is not a plus for me. I was like, okay, this is gonna be very quick, and it was not. Like, chapters were sort of long and very dense, and I couldn't bring myself to go through them easily. It was the narrative wouldn't flow in a way that I enjoy. It was just, I got stuck multiple times reading this one, just because it contained so much information. And again, the sci-fi aspect of it is a huge turn off for me, but that's just my fault, because, if you don't like sci-fi, then probably this is not the right book for you. But if you do enjoy sci-fi as a genre, then maybe this one is gonna be great, So yeah, just know, if you pick up this book, just considering my opinion, just bear in mind that I don't like sci-fi usually. And this was no exception, even though, I like her writing style. It was just not enough for me to appreciate this book fully. I just thought I'd give Guin a chance and see if I liked her, but yeah, it's just not for me. I don't think I'm gonna pick up more Guin in the future. I'll briefly mention a book in Italian, again, that it was not translated, and it is about parenting again. Well, not really about parenting, but about mothers and their anger in becoming so. What it means to become a mother and have this anger inside that is just there for everyone, because of expectations, because of what you compare yourself with the other moms, or the ideal sort of mom, and you feel like you're not enough. You as a little girl, and your relationship with your mother, it all comes back, and it's just, this was very useful, but I couldn't give this one a high rating because I didn't like the way it was written. It was just, the author is not a writer. She's a doctor. She was a doctor, and I think you can feel that she really does not have that great of a writing style. That's why this is actually a collection of different experiences that you can, like, she did not paraphrase them. She's just put all of them together, so you have different sort of writing styles inside, just because we have texts from different people, from a lot of different people, a lot of, again, experiences that are drawn from these groups that she organized, groups of moms, in which people were talking and just sharing their experience. And yeah, some of the texts inside are beautiful, but like the whole concept, I don't think it was put together that well. And also she would invent some sort of, these sort of fairy tales, not fairy tales, tales, I would say, yeah. These tales before every chapter, and they were just with their own moral and everything, and they were just very bad and very obvious. And I was like, why did she need to include these tales inside this book? But again, I'm glad that I read it, and it was useful for me to have like a pat on the back again, and see that I'm not the only one that experiences some sort of feelings in becoming a mother. So I think it's an important book. Too bad for the writing style. Onto the 4-star reads, we have Heartstopper Vol.II by Oseman, and I read this. I read the first one in December. These are lovely and fluffy, and they're very quick reads, like extremely quick, maybe too quick, because I read them like you can manage one of them in like half an hour, and even less. And it's just, yeah, I'm glad that I read it. It's just the story of these two boys falling in love and just being in high school, and how family react, how people around them react. I don't have a lot to say about it just because it being so short, I don't really want to spoil anything. But yeah, the writing style is very sort of sketchy. It's black and white, and I enjoy it. As I said, for the first one, I do think that I like a more like neat sort of drawing, but I appreciate this one as well. It's just very cute. So yeah, I can't wait to read the third one. I have it on my shelves, and I just plan to read it very soon. It does seem also a little bit longer, which is a plus. Then I listened to the audiobook of Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America by Michael Dyson. First of all, I have to say that the audio version of this one is great, and I do suggest you pick up the audio, just because, as the title suggests, this is a sermon. So the fact that the author himself is talking, is voicing the sermon, and you know, addresses you as beloved most of the time, and it's just, I think it's brilliantly done, and it just, the writing style is very simple and clear and gets straight to the point. It's a great discussion about race, about being black in America, about how white people in America just don't seem to be recognizing the privilege they have. I say they, but of course I'm talking about white people in general, but you know, this is specific to America just because of the situation that they're living, and it was just very interesting. I think everybody should read this one because it's a very important read, and you feel like pinpointed because you should feel like it, and it's just amazing. I really enjoyed this one. It was thought-provoking and honest and very readable. The last book that I'm going to talk about is another non-fiction book. I feel like I read a lot of non-fiction, and it is my first 5-star read of the year. I was very happy to, you know, to have read this book. This is Heavy, an American memoir by Kiese, Laymon, and I feel like I read this book twice because I've listened to the audiobook of this one, but I also on Script there was the ebook version as well, and I would switch to, actually I would listen to it and then reread it on the ebook, just because I feel like it was hard for me to get through in the audio version, a little bit because of his way of speaking, his slang, and also because he uses words so in such a particular and beautiful way that I wanted to be able to read them on a page, because, you know, I wanted my time to stop and think about what he was saying and how he was saying it. And it's something that with the audio version I feel like you don't, like you're missing something, and with this one I just didn't want to miss a beat. And this is, again, on a very similar note of Tears We Cannot Stop, although they are very different books. First of all, because Tears We Cannot Stop is targeted to, as it says, white Americans, and this one, I don't feel like I was a target audience for this one. I think this one was written for black people, by a black person for black people, and it's just a privilege to actually get a glimpse of their world and get inside. Like, he lets you inside the experience of him being black and living in America and having to face racism and abuse, because he was abused when he was very young, and being overweight, and the heaviness of it all, not only weight-wise, but it's a very, you know, in a metaphorical way, the heaviness of being all of those things in America nowadays. And it's just amazing. I loved the writing, I loved the tone of it, and I even loved the fact that I couldn't, you know, get all the things straight like on the first go. I feel like it's a book that you can read and reread and keep rereading and maybe get even more out of it. He's a college professor, and yeah, that's just his life from childhood to where he is right now. The relationship with his mother, sex and longing and gambling and just being addicted. Just a lot of themes, and they're all handled beautifully. It's very raw and, again, honest, intense. I don't have enough words to describe it, but it was beautiful. I really think I'm gonna reread this one at some point, just because, again, I feel like I read it twice, but a third time would be even better. And then I saw him like talking on like YouTube interviews and such, and he's a great man, and yeah, he just knows his way with words. Highly recommend this one. So that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video, and if you read any of the books, of course, that I mentioned, please let me know your thoughts on them, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!